Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Cherry Tree Issue 10 launch reading. And I'm really pleased to welcome you all tonight. I'm James Hall. I'm the editor-in-chief of Cherry Tree, which just means that I am with Amber Talianisich, part of the circulatory system of this journal. The editors, I try to make their jobs the easiest in life. So I just want to recognize some of our team in the room. Lindsay Lusby is here, is a senior reader in poetry. Elise Benzel is here, the genre editor for poetry. Kim Andrews is here. That is our literary shade editor extraordinaire. Yeah, exactly. I'm so pleased that we can publish some fabulous shade. And I know that Roy Kesey is here, our associate editor. And we have some readers here like Mackenzie Brady. Abby Wargo a long time ago was our layout editor, so intern. So thanks for coming tonight. Amara Sorosiak is a reader for Cherry Tree. We've got a bunch of folks who've just helped make this happen. And I'm not going to see everyone's name because there are 70 participants and counting. So I will try to give you a shout out in the chat. Sophia Abdur-Rahman is our nonfiction editor, so shout out to her. Sophie Foster, Sarah Coverdale. I'm going to see a few more. Randy Collins is here. Thank you, Randy, for your work. Olivia Dorsey. Nick Anstead is our senior fiction reader. Listen, this magazine, every magazine is a labor of love. It takes an entire team of people who love literature. Cherry Tree does pay its staff. I get paid last, and it's basically whatever pennies are left in the coffers. And we try to pay our contributors, our readers, and our editors. It's not enough. I wish I could give you all the money in the world, because what you do is so important to me. I would put my life down on your work. So thank you for it. I really, really appreciate everyone doing what they're doing. No one here is joining because they don't like words or don't understand their power. And that's a really important thing in our world right now. So without further ado, I'm just going to call the readers, basically. So we're going to kick things off with Diane Seuss. If you've never read Diane Seuss, I mean, I kind of envy you, just because like all of that fabulosity is waiting to overwhelm and make your world brighter than it ever has been, but also like get to it. Diane Seuss is the 2022 Pulitzer Prize winner for poetry for Frank Sonnets, and has a poem in this issue. Di, would you start us off? Would you launch this launch reading?
I'm up for it. Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Hi, everybody. I want to thank you, James, and everybody involved in the magazine and all the contributors. I can't wait to hear you. My camera will be off and my sound because my dog. That's all I'm going to say. So here I go. This is sort of an outlier poem for me, and I wrote it after Sinead O'Connor's passing. I dreamed, and I warn you, it was circuitous. First came a girl. She was nothing like Sinead, but she had just shaved her head like Sinead, but with none of the impact. For the girl in the dream, it was a fashion statement. She was pilfering her closet, looking for a dress to wear to some literary event. This one, or that one? An offstage Greek chorus weighed in. That one, they sang. A black velvet sleeveless number with red roses that I mistook, I was the dreamer, for tongues. The girl in the dream had written a book of stories. One story in particular was brought to life in the dream. A young gay man who attended a fundamentalist Christian university had just stood up from a lover's bed. Well, that's that, the young man said, stretching and scratching his belly. The implication was that he was done with sex and love. It had lost its fascination for him. Such a young man to be so done, though all of us are done in time. Even the horny elderly in time are done. In the dream, I expressed sadness to the girl draped in her black velvet dress with the lolling roses. It's sad, I said to her of the story, for such a young man to be so done. The girl raked me with her eyes. I was not dressed for the occasion, whatever it was. I was shaggy as a spring horse, no makeup, my self-cut bangs angled badly, wearing some man's discarded bathrobe. It's only a story, the girl said, expressing literary snootiness. Again, she was nothing like Sinead beyond the shaved head, which had been done in imitation of Sinead, but had no relationship to Sinead's motives, to Sinead's interior. What part of you is the girl in the velvet dress? What part of you is the young man done with sex and love? What part of you is Sinead? My God, I'm sad. My soul blooms red with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I aspire to be a horny elderly one day. So.
I
Thank you very much, Di. My students today, we talked about your poem in the Pushcart anthology at the Puppy Mill, the ballad that ends with bitch. So it's funny that your dog is joining us today. All right, next up at the podium is Daniel Barnum. Take it away, Daniel.
Oh gosh, great to be here. Thank you all so much. In a way, this is about horny elderly people. Stag dance. In the first sound film clip, The Dixon Experiments, two men stand in closed position, dancing in tight circles. They do not speak, diegesis coming from Dixon, sharpening his violin, a barcarolle a cabin boy would sing. In the first sound film, there is no singing. Too many frames for 17 seconds. The two men twirl. The director steps in, fiddling with his recording horn, too big to fit the frame. And just before the end, another man waltzes in, crosses rear of the scene. In the first sound film, two men make no sound dancing, touching chests, holding hands. They spin on some unheard command, not looking. The distance their forms keep, intention, something written in light, in black and white, near enough to kiss, but not, never separate, fingers curled over each other's knuckles, joining into fists. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's really important for folks to kind of see the form of that too. Just because I sometimes don't quite get when people do the virgules, the slashes like that, but this poem could not be in a different format. It's so beautiful. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you. All those slashes.
Yeah, all the slashes. It's really terrific. And if you've not seen that first sound clip, it's waiting for you too. You Google that. Next up is Mary Biddinger. Take it
Hey,
away.
thank you so much. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thanks to the readers. This is such a lovely screen. I'm going to read the first poem, which is on page 9, and it's called Everyone Thinks True Love is Overrated Until It Happens to Them. I worked at the gift wrap station at an old-fashioned department store. Tweed fathers and women in drop waist Laura Ashley. Kids asking Santa for one of those rolling metal rings you hit with a stick. I could never remember which of my wool sweaters was tolerable without a shell underneath. Neck a yoke of itch. Between customers, I measured 2-inch pieces of tape, stuck them beneath the counter, swayed to an instrumental version of Dancing Queen, hid my Edith Wharton novel in a pinecone display. One night on the way to empty the trash bin, I brushed past a young man with woodsman hair and a buffalo plaid jacket. His hands were all bloody, like from smashing out a window. In a soap opera voice, my shift manager announced, 15 minutes until close. The gift wrap station was shut down, but the man asked me for a few pieces of tissue paper, his voice a gleaming spool of copper wire. I wrapped his knuckles like an army field nurse, secured the paper with a 2-inch strip of tape. The shift manager breezed past to collect tips, which were allegedly donated to orphans or sick pets. On the walk home, I felt heat in my knees, admired a drop of blood stamped on my wrist. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. You had me at Laura Ashley dropped waist. Next up is Jane Blunschi.
Hey, this is from my essay, 11, 12, 13 years old. I'm lying in bed with my first real girlfriend. I'm 23 years old and she is 24. She has painted the walls of the bedroom in her rented house dark purple gray, and she has, of all things, a king-size waterbed covered in lavender sheets and a puffy black comforter. It is 1989. She keeps the air conditioner in her house down low, and under the warm covers, the room feels like a cave. She lights candles when I come over to eat dinner and spend the night, and the only other light in the room right now is the soft glow of track lights over the bed. She's the only person I've ever left the lights on for during sex, and I allow her to see and feel the scar on my stomach and ask me questions about it. Pink, shiny, and long-heeled, it is a thin band of ropey tissue that runs from the notch below my sternum, curving into the underside of my ribs on the left side of my torso. I tell her that the scar is from an abdominal surgery I had a long time ago, which technically is true. I'm lying in a hospital bed in Shreveport, Louisiana. I'll be 14 in a week. In a week, I'll start high school. There's a tube in my nose and my belly is bisected by a diagonal row of surgical staples that ends in a drain that looks like a balloon. But I won't know that until 3 days later when a nurse removes it while I'm taking a shower. A stream of black blood will splash onto the tiled wall and floor and then slide down the drain, solid and quivering, slick as a snake, more like the clots of blood I found on my maxi pads than what comes out of the scab on my knee from a tumble I took 2 weeks ago at summer camp. Thank you.
Jane, thank you so much for that, making really difficult stuff talkable and beautiful too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a terrific essay. Brian Clark, you are up next.
Thank you, James. It's good to be reading with so many fantastic readers today. So I'm going to be reading The Work of Amend. Soon we continue work on the oil pipelines at Lodges. Our reassurance is suspended and we need to resume our failure to fix the fuel-covered earth. The decontamination process is a plane too heavy to fly. It dives under the field and we are afraid to lift it back up because what if it tells us what it has seen? Today in Washington, D.C. is a detention center to hold the deviant contamination of soils and aquifers. Of course, it will disappear. Force is the base on which we fashion ourselves American. A form I made in the sand at the beaches of the island with each of my national feet. No marks on the body at all, but already a few do rise to the surface. A first step to take in the decontamination process is to suspend it for some years and to start timidly so as to ensure the U.S. expression of force isn't made to feel self-conscious. After 11 years of struggle, we are on the right path. If it sees its shadow, it might detonate, though, so above all, be careful. Our real mission is to keep looking, not to find or repair or remember. We will visit the site and work to assess whether and if, and this should fuel significant advances in waiting. Then the U.S. force is delayed and corrected. The waste is civilian, and we will fail them and wage a very safely manufactured defense against the injustice of apology. According to the official, there is no perceived injury if there is no rush to treat. The slow force shivers itself awake, closes its eyes. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it would be really important for people to know the process by which this poem came into the world. Could you just say something about like what your work does here?
Yeah, so I took archival materials about environmental contamination from Lazarus Air Force Base in the Azores, and I used homophonic translation, resounding each individual letter based on what the letter can sound like. So different letters can make different sounds, and then transforming that into poetry through this process.
Thank you very much. Yeah, wild, great work. Thank you very, very much. And next up is a French teacher extraordinaire, Jessica Cuello.
Thank you, James. This is a thrill. It's a thrill to be here, and I love you, James. Communion. I ate myself the way schoolgirls ate Christ at the age of reason. I ate with no dress, no white, no wreath, ate my nails, my skin, a sliver of bark and clover tips. My cousins talked of ribbons and their catechism. I longed for it, the ribbon, the selection. God separated good from bad, like when my mother stood in church and a woman said, "No wafer for you, divorced, because God can't love a severed line." The teacher singled me out to walk ahead and eat alone. I threw out my food I could not chew. My mouth had devoured itself. Was it from the question in the bath? Did he? I was 3. Was it because I knew the form wrong took when wrong took me? You could not taste God and stay a child. There was a single photo of me, black and white, no face, just a grainy head, sideways in a bassinet. That's how I knew I'd been a baby. It was a baptism photo. That's how I knew I was one time blessed. The Father left, but lingered, indifferent. God left, then lingered. He was inner bread, ornamental cloth. I was a salty body, averted head. I bit into the sour leaf, put my tongue on the metal key. Was he sickened by my smell, the inside of my legs on fingers? My cousins clutched their tiny flowers and spongy cakes. They took in the lesson, how I longed to receive it, how I longed to be fed.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Please go back through the comments because you've got some love there. I would repeat all of those lines, but you could not taste God and stay a child has got to be one of my favorite lines. But terrific, terrific work. Thank you. And next up to the mic is David Eileen. Take it away, David Eileen.
Hello. I'm going to be reading a poem that was titled with a tweet from user @memegodmel. Do you think they explored each other's bodies inside the Trojan horse? After a little while in the wooden guts, do you think, warrior to warrior, trapped in the stomach of something that can never eat and still has assumed you, that you might question the maroon belly air and its relationship to the maroon of your body, so much like the body of the body next to you, which is also warm, also wanting. Between fights, such a body might wrap itself in leather and balm, might need the poultice of warm lips sucking warm skin, might hunger for wine and come close to finding it when following a soldier's thirst to a soldier's stream. Oh, lay down your sword in the bowl dark, brother. Our rasping voices in the quiet can be kept behind our shields. Your fireflies safe in the bone jar of my chest. What else are we dying for, if not the blood my blood covers willingly when we are both distilled on death's red-tipped spear?
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, David. That was really beautiful. And next up, let's keeping things moving. I hope we have another Trojan horse here, but probably not. William Fargason.
Hey, thanks for having me. This poem is called Ode to the Triodanus by Flora. Ode to the Triodanus by Flora, or Venus's looking glass, purple flower painted on my great-grandmother's kettle that she painted herself, rising off the ceramic, kept forever alive against the pointed green leaves. These flowers, pressed 50 years in paint, like Dickinson's flowers, pressed in letters and sent to friends, the green staining the paper like the haze of a memory. The flowers serve no purpose other than beauty, but took her hours to paint while my great-grandfather was at school teaching, before he'd come home and get drunk and beat her again. These flowers, at the center of their purple, was the golden pistol, like a star she could see out her window, like the gravity of a sun she orbited. All around the vase the flowers bloom, forever stuck in bloom, and bloom for me now, even 50 years later, as I stand in front of my parents' china cabinet, holding the kettle, the flowers. She painted them not long before her first, or maybe second nervous breakdown, before her husband committed her to the asylum that held her like the kettle held these flowers, before she signed the bottom of the kettle in cursive, the gold script catching the light in my hands, the flowers she left behind, blooming against the sun. Thank you.
It is really hard to use the word bloom 4 times, at least 4 times in a poem, and you do it, you pull it off. It's such a terrific poem. And I'm glad you said the title of it, because I would have murdered, I don't know, Latin very well. So anyway, thank you so much, William. I really appreciate that reading. And next up is Joan Kwon Glass. Take it away, Joan.
Hi, thanks, James. Hi, everybody. So this poem is inspired by a Facebook post that I made, and actually one of the comments was Diane Seuss's comment. It's called Thoughts I Have While Reading Comments on a Photo I Post of a Moth That I Can't Identify. How some of my friends assumed spotted lanternfly, but they got it wrong. How easy it is to mistake a harmless winged creature for a threat. How a threat is just as often believed to be a harmless winged creature. How I want to believe I can be saved. How I want to believe that moths can bring us closer to divinity. How Ilia Underwing was named for Ilia, mother of Rome's founders, Romulus and Remus. How they were believed to be fathered by the god Mars. How my idea of divinity is so different from my mother's. How I am more afraid of being claimed than being abandoned. How when I was 7, God whispered to me in a dream. How when I told this to my mother, she laughed the way she does when she's afraid. How fearful we are of what we do not understand. How moths learn to play dead in order to avoid annihilation. How I wish it were easier to avoid annihilation. How fearful we are of what we can't name. How we name what we think belongs to us. How I named my daughter Tegan, which means beautiful poet. How my mother named me Joan, which means God's gracious gift. How in school we pledge allegiance to one nation under God. How today I saw a mugshot of our nation's former president. How I cannot help but fear for my daughter in this world. How the first thing I will buy for her when she goes to college is mace. How the first thing she will do when she gets to college is toss the mace in the garbage. How a winged creature will always long for fearless flight. How I cannot separate my mother's faith from fear. How I can almost remember the name God whispered to me as I slept. How a whisper can sound like wings. How winged creatures are drawn to light the way they are drawn to desire. How winged creatures often mistake flame for moonlight. How sometimes we cannot distinguish between what saves us and what destroys us. Thank you.
I'm a little wrecked by that reading. That was really beautiful. That ending just always kind of gets me.
I have to say it because my daughter is in there. She was like, of course, you could turn a poem about a moth into something depressing.
Low key, like, because we're Facebook friends, I'm like a little obsessed with what your daughter says to you all the time. So it's pretty hilarious. You raised a good one, it seems. Thank you, Joan. Next up is Sara Henning. Take it away, Sara.
Thank you, James. I adore you. I adore everything that you do. Your writing is amazing. Thank you to everybody who helps like make Cherry Tree what it is. And I've been asked to read this poem, so I'm going to read this poem about a man that I loved quite a lot in my 20s, and he was terrible. So it's called Sorrow, 2004 to 2010 for Jay. I loved you like my first taste of gin. Its seismic heat gaslighting my esophagus as it pooled and stung. I was 24 when I melted in your thrall. You taught me to shimmer spectral, the way for years I disappeared into my mother's moods. I clung to her voice, your voice, that shrapnel a cappella shaking the room. I fell bewitched into delicious rhythm, whole evenings of clove cigarettes, their sugar branding itself on my skin. I took everything as a sign, lightning bugs flashing conjugal codes, cicadas busking love cries. With you, my body stripped to its rawest sounds, the music of me hungry for everything. You were the God I wanted to shiver me into him, and I would rise up singing. As a child, your father broke your mother's nose, and you stood unblinking as he gripped her, bruised her, shook the house with threats you'd wake to in the night. You saw your mother limp to bed, delirious from his touch. This is the way you wooed me. When I left my mother's body, I opened my eyes to a world so beautiful, so strange, I could not cry. It took a doctor's touch, a man's touch, to make me breathe. When I swallowed a whole bottle of Tylenol, lay on your side of our bed, closed my eyes, you were the one who lifted me, pills in my gut, vortexing down the toilet's hollow. Your hands, your voice, they rose above my head, and now I can't remember if you beat them out of me. For years I followed you into every hell our bodies made. Pain was the trick my body mistook for joy. When I left you, running, keys in my hands, my feet lifted as if I flew. I locked my car seconds before you fisted my windshield, threatened to slash my tires. Heaving, you lay prostrate on my hood. Love, I thought we'd writhe right then in a whole opera of glass, glitz covering us, cutting us until we died in each other's arms. You're still my chosen one. First man I trusted would hang the moon in my name. You could have buried me, weeping. I'm still stupid enough to call it love. Thank you.
That's another one. The last line is just like, yeah, it's killer. Thank you so much for writing that poem and for trusting it with us too. It's really beautiful. And next up is Lita Kurth. Take it away, Lita.
Hi, everybody. Well, I'm reading something short that didn't get published in this magazine, but this seems like such a great community, and it's called Community. Around Milton, Wisconsin, the Rock River rises, eats the sand from under the blacktop. Two Amish girls, or Mennonite, in long, light, homemade dresses and white lace caps, enter the world's largest Culver's restaurant. Straight and clean, sisters perhaps, they must have left their haying, milking, sewing, jelly making. They order and eat and exit, passing an employee who washes smudges from the glass. At the foot of the parking lot, their strong tan arms pick up shovels laid against a mountain of sand. In dresses, calm, pristine, side by side with men in jeans, they fill sandbags to save their neighbors' houses and the world's largest Culver restaurant from the flood.
Lita, thank you very much. And I'm glad to hear another piece. I definitely, Advantages was very funny to me. And I'm glad to have read that and to hear your voice tonight with something else too. Thank you. And next up is Rebecca Lehmann, who was we were colleagues once upon a time. So I'm really glad to see Rebecca again.
Thank you, James. And thanks for having me to this and to everybody who's read before. And also to Lita, one of my favorite restaurants is Culver. So I feel like I might need to run out for an emergency custard after this is over. This is called Blue. I saw the leaves and then the flowers, sprouting like crazed blue eyeballs off the loping vine that trellised itself, 3 sunflower stalks, and a late fall buttercup squash over the edge of the fence. My daughter stood mid-frame in the photograph, holding a stuffed puppy, and blue blossoming off the bloom to midnight, her violet shirt, her tie-dye leggings the color of afternoon sky. So few things in nature are blue: blue jays, cobalt, the blueberry, nightshade berries that shouldn't be eaten. She was standing in front of a pile of dog shit, telling me to pick it up, mommy, because she didn't want to step in it, and our real dog, not the stuffed one she held in the photograph, had left it there. Those blossoms are not like crazed blue eyeballs at all. They're like blue trumpets, like strangled trumpets, choked off, oxygen needy, and inside ants crawl circles around pale stamens, just as the maggots she and I found decomposing the walnuts outside her school worked their way through the earthy rind to expose the hard nut inside to help the daft squirrels gather and store. Thank you.
what I love so much about literature is like I think I know what words can do, and then I read all of your work and I'm like, oh wow, it can do so much more than I ever even knew. To go from like blue blossoming to dog shit is just like a whiplash that just gives me life. So thank you, Rebecca. And next up is V Key Now. Take it away, V.
I'm gonna read Tumbleweed, and I'll try to time myself for a minute, see if how far I can make.
Hey V, just go ahead and read the whole thing. It's short.
Okay.
Thank you.
A tumbleweeds. Over a banquet of corn, steak, avocados, Rayana's eyes glaze over the men's burly faces as they chew heartily and quietly across from her. Not too long ago, she learned from the New York Times that a young Moroccan boy who shared the same names as hers, Rayan, had died after being stuck in a well for days in the small village of Idrain. He had fallen down a narrow and precipitous well about 20 inches in diameter. Rescuers or makeshift extraction team, which included Adi Hawadi Tamrani, had lowered a camera down the esophagus of the well to measure and quantify the length and depth of his suffering. He was alive, but bruised and bloodied, working with hand lamps while they drilled aslant towards him, and while his neighbors and contemporaries sat under the tree to watch verdure over him, he died. She thought of his small, mangled 10-year-old body and how alone he must have felt dying in that ancient water silo, how close he was to contaminants of radon, bacteria, chromium-6, and volatile organic compounds. She thought about the comfort of her faucet and clean running water in her Texas home. She chewed cautiously and redundantly over the tough beef and thought about how a single gay man could adopt a child in Africa, about her short time spent in England, and about how did Ryan, who was sort of an A, died. She blamed it on astral projections, what became of her body and her consciousness years down the road. Over the next decade or so years, she transitioned from being a woman to a man. And from time to time, she wondered, did she die for him or did he die for her? Did he land at the bottom of the well? And where was the bucket? How did he get trapped? How many bones in his body did he break? She reasoned that by him occupying, seizing, conquering, and taking over her body, she would have access to these intimate details of his existence before he passed away. But the only entry to any reality is her own torment. After she transitioned, he thought he would be happy. Instead, he was miserable, not as miserable as a little cunt. Ryan would have flashbacks of falling in a well, but this well wasn't as narrow or steep as the original one Ryan plunged down. Its mouth was large like a lake. In the flashback, the well looked like a tumbleweed. But unlike a cumulative communal anatomy of plants using wind and ground and circular momentum to disseminate its seeds, the tumbleweed well was hollow and translucent and light and vascular and perforated, not dark and scary as he expected. And he could see the abyss of his or her cascade in it. Its eyes would always turn their ocular vaticination inwards, back to this time when she sat over for dinner, across from these mesomorphic men, and thought how astral projections were insidious, cinematic, imaginary things that writers and thinkers create to pass the long, lonely, ontological human condition. She thought about Eric Reiter's strands behind her eyes, Marvel Studios' Avengers Endgame, Mike Flanagan's Doctor Sleep, The Last Jedi, and thought that what couldn't exist in reality, the mind conceived to balance the ecosystem of the interior and the exterior. 2 decades later, while traveling to Constantine, a city in North Algeria, Ryan stood leaning against a well in the Sahara Desert as the bucket was lowered down to its bottom. After eating some dates and spitting out the massive sieves, he leaned down the well and died. His life has been bookended by an accident and a calculated suicide. And Rayana was that flesh between two bread slices, the meat and salad and cucumber of that ontological sandwich which the earth has named Rayan. From one oasis to the next, Rayan's life has been a thirsty one, the kind that quenches his hydration by submerging his full body in it, even if that well wasn't a mirror that could be consumed through indirect reflection. Sorry if that was so long. I have not read that out loud before.
No, it wasn't long at all. Thank you. And thank you for honoring the request that I made of reading the whole thing. I just think it says what a story can do, how much time it can cover, and the kinds of diction that you get in that story. I just really love B. Thank you so much. Next up is B.M. Owens. Take it away.
Hi, thank you, Cherry Tree, and all of you wonderful people. I am so lucky to be here. You're all so talented, and I'm loving all of this. I'm going to read Picture of a Girl Who Doesn't Know She's Bi. At a bar, several drinks in, I ask a guy to take a photo of me and my girl who's just a friend. We clasp one another's hips, turn towards each other, almost lip to lip. We pull back and laugh into ourselves. Flash. We check the photo to see how we look together. I zoom in to the woman printed just behind us in the back of the room, her eyes and nose pointing downward at us. My friend laughs and it sounds like an incantation. I follow her lead. She moves back over to the photographer who has brought in another man. I look back at the woman behind us and she's still watching. She looks like my mother. I order another drink. The music is too loud to hear what either of the guys say to us, but I don't care. My friend is laughing, her hand resting in the middle of her collarbone. I laugh with her, not knowing why. One of the men plucks her away from me, and I ask the guy left standing with me to buy another drink. I check back to see if the woman is still staring, and there are more people now, and every face is too blurry to focus. I can't tell who is looking where. We dance separately with our assigned men until I get so drunk that I grab my friend's hand, pulling her away. I tuck a strand of her hair behind her ear, making a wish. I whisper, we should have a foursome. I'm too drunk to know if I mean it, too drunk to know where the idea came from, too drunk to know I'm casting spells for her. She grabs both of my arms and nods. Our eyes lock, and I don't know who kissed who first. For a moment, I'm outside of myself, watching this happen. This is the photo I want to take and keep and exist in. I'm pulled back in, and we unlock fingers that I don't remember entwining. The guy I'd been partnered with turns away from me and finds another woman, refusing to look at me again. I realize we've lost the fourth in our foursome, and the spell evaporates. My friend asks why I look sad, and I hear myself telling her it's because that guy doesn't want me. She pushes her own guy away and grabs my hand for the last time that night. Our palms slip apart as I follow her through the crowd, the tips of my fingers grasping until she lets go for a man. I down another drink, looking at us in the photo, still holding hands.
Thank you so much. I love that piece. It's just, there's something achy and angsty and beautiful and romantic and sexy about it. It just makes me want to go out and have a foursome. All right, next up is Aaron Rabinowitz. Take it away, Aaron.
Thanks so much, James. This is a poem in the literary shade section about Henry Kissinger. who it was Richard Nixon's Secretary of State, and it was written just after his death at age 100 in November. It's on page 149, and I have an epigraph from the which states, the statesman is permitted only one guess. His mistakes are irretrievable. And that's Henry Kissinger himself. But the poem is called Retrievable. Carpets of bombs float from Cambodian forests into airplane bellies like iron filings to magnets. And Argentinian death squads sit bullets into the straws of their smoking guns. And next door, Allende becomes Houdini. Nixon moonwalks out of Air Force One and unresigns, unlaughs at racist jokes, unblames blacks, Jews, and homosexuals, while Kissinger shakes off the hands of diplomats and inhales whispers from presidential ears. Terrible decisions become wonderful when you run the film in reverse. Henry Kissinger died on Wednesday. It was announced by his consulting firm. Thanks.
Aaron, thank you so much. And we had originally taken the piece Henry Turns 100, which is right before it. And then Aaron wrote us and said right after Henry had no more foursomes, and asked if we might be interested in this. And indeed we were. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's great to read these two together. And Professor Andrews also says in the comments a little bit about it too. So, all right, next up is Erica Reid. Please take it away, Erica.
Thank you so much for including me. My poem is on page 124. It is called Nocturne After Kelly Weber. There are things I can only say at night. I hang a dinner plate for a moon. Soon morning will crack my illusion with her broken fingers. I call this ritual. Kelly says we don't owe anyone anything. Still, I was swaddled into a world of owing. There is a tooth in the word indentured, contracts ripped ragged. When I ripped my mother open, our contracts matched. That was that. My life borrowed against before I knew how to bat my eyes. This porcelain mood won't pull a tide. Nothing shifts inside me. Waves lap a concrete shore. If anything green sprouts through the cracks, salt water takes it back. To grow would be to mother. My body snaps vines like fingers, hemlock and cement. Once I met a church. His doors were wide open. He said, "You don't owe anyone anything." Doors wide like traps. I need to understand the economy, the rate of exchange. My worth is asleep under a blanket strewn with teeth. If I move, I'll break a smile across this floor. Hunger is different from emptiness. I'd need to know what I want to be hungry. There are things I can only want at night. And here comes a new day's light, crooked at each knuckle. Thank you.
Hunger is different from emptiness. And that is the news that we get from your poem. That's so beautiful. Thank you very much, Eric. And penultimately, Jane Satterfield. Take it away, Jane.
Thanks, James and Lindsay and Amber and everyone at Cherry Tree. It's wonderful to be in the room, especially in a bout of midterm grading. This is totally resuscitating, so thank you, everyone. My poem is on page 62. It's Cardinals on Fire, and it's in conversation with two poetic luminaries, James Merrill and Emily Bronte. Cardinals on Fire. Another afternoon, we lounged about, lamenting disappearance. There was no consensus about the cause, just a set of eerie symptoms. Neighbors fired up the grill and itemized the uptick. Songbird deaths in surprising numbers. Unfounded rumors swirled that cicadas were to blame. Headlines declaimed the dangers of apocalyptic heat, of countless species on the brink, the variants that wheel Corona red among us.
Fledglings perished, blind eyes fixated on the skies. It was our wont to worry. As watching each summer dusk, fewer fireflies, we wondered what else we'd wrecked. I left a book propped open, pages riffling the words. So hopeless is the world without, the world within, I doubly prize. It's one way to lead a life, reined in, rustic, rooted, the inward turn of determined solitude. And stepping out of the studio, I saw the feeder was aflame, as if some sudden atmospheric tumult or torch flash of acetylene flared its furious script across the humid air before becoming real again. A pair of sparring cardinals lifted off, feathers fanning out above a drifting spray of cracked shells and seed. How had I forgotten? Despair can vanish into distraction or something like delight.
That poem just washes over you. The thinking and the singing are so strong. It's so beautiful, Jane. Like your work is. I'm so pleased that you're in Cherry Tree. So thank you for putting your cardinal in the cherry tree. I'm sure that I had to say it. I'm sorry. And last but certainly not least is Alexander Lazarus Wolf. Take it away, Alexander.
So I'm going to read a poem on page 107 called Riddle. Riddle. Slurred words, tactical words, words of ice and tricks and fire, new words, used words, soft words like the side of the trees, leaves in a breeze, Machiavellian words with the intent of a switchblade, words that always seek yet never find, words of diseases and words of war, words whispered to a child, or words that glide out on the stream of one hushed breath, coasting on the silence of the still air, dissipating into the evening. Coded words and sung words that are as full as a beam of moonlight and as robust as a baritone's voice resonating in the wood chamber of a Baroque opera house. Words said casually, said seriously, confided to a priest, or divulged your knees in prayer amid the flicker of a flame, as the halo of light from a candle's lit wick licks your softened shadow that plays across the wine you like a puppet show. Words called out in an empty room, words I said to please you, forced and facile, ephemeral and mimed. Words from a time that's fading as the days fly by, as the white light of tomorrow rushes in. Words shouted from the front porch, shouted from behind locked doors, or stifled by sobbing, or said under a breath, or choked on the throat like a piece of steak. I've learned that some things are irreconcilable, the pages of a book ripped out before the denouement. I'd like to think time will suture the wound, set the broken bone right, that I'll come to a place where I'll unlock that gate. After all, we once shared the same last name. But that surname is now a rusted link in a metal chain, the gate's hinge now a thread of tetanus. Family is a word, a reassurance, an expectation by blood right that blood alone can never set right. Words of sympathy and words of darkness, words of distance and words of disconnect, a frayed thread, a phone call dropped, a ticket for a flight you will not take. Thank you.
I feel like that is the perfect poem to end on. I know we went alphabetically, but it does feel like that was the inevitable ending, Alexander. Also, so in my class, when I teach literary editing and publishing, who the screeners, the undergrad students have to take that class, and we talk a lot about the kind of aesthetic that Cherry Tree has. And one of the things we talk about a lot is urgency, that there is something in a Cherry Tree piece that really like calls and begs to be heard. And I just think after this reading, after hearing all of your very urgent, beautiful words, it was a real demonstration. So I'm going to stop teaching the class and just let them read or listen to this reading on YouTube. So thank you all for coming. The other thing I want to tell you is that everyone in the attendance here it has a coupon code for 50% off of our entire store. It's not just Cherry Tree, but we have letterpress broadsides, books. We have really terrific water bottles. These things are indestructible. And other stuff. Check it out. And it one per customer, but also it's good forever. I'll send an email too, because you don't have enough of those in your life. Thank you all very much again for your words in your work, the things that you do. It's preposterous to sit down and put language on paper, and it is the only thing that will save us, I think. So thank you very much. And if you want, you can unsilence and clap, and or you can just let me do it for you. Anyway, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
This is
Awesome. I needed this.
It was great.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
What a wonderful reading. It was
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
The 1 minute readings, that's the way to go.
Love it.
I just farted.
Have a great night, everyone.
Have a great night. Take
Night.
care.
Thank
Thank you all
you.
so much.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too. Bye for now.
Good night, David.
Good night, Mom.
Good night, everyone. I'm ending the meeting. Bye.